Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. And of course, you good old boys from Africa, you know we love the Big C tribe. We love them in Canada, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south on the beautiful south side of where all that rain's coming from. The good old boys down south. Big C, I think you've been washed out today. Big C's out doing some recruiting just to see if he can find out how to keep Alabama on top of the polls. I know there's a lot of people saying maybe it should be Clemson, but we'll have a great show today. It is a beautiful August the 3rd, 2018, in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And I do want to say a lot going on in the sports universe. We had the NFL Hall of Fame game last night, and we had none other than the Bears. The Bears, haven't heard that name in a long time, but the Bears had a game last night, and they actually played the new monsters of the Northeast, I guess you could call, in the Baltimore Ravens. Not the best football. The Ravens and the Bears showed off a lot of defense. Baltimore wins 17-16. What I do like about the game last night is that the Ravens and the Bears honored their great linebackers in Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher with some defense that made them be proud to be in the Hall of Fame for an NFL preseason game. I know some people don't like some of the rule changes. There are times when you feel like maybe we should go back to a brand of football where you don't have a face mask, because that way you're not going to lead with your head. I know we got to keep players safe, but there's still a lot of talk about that. A lot happening in the golf universe. The great Tiger Woods, he's tied for a 10th. He shot 2 under round 2, and he's 6 under. And he's behind Fleetwood, which is the number one leader, and he's at minus 11, as well as Poulter is also at minus 11 at the Firestone Championship. So that's a $10 million purse. Also Thomas and Staley right there and in the lead for the golf universe. That game is on CBS Sports. Coming up over the weekend, you'll see a lot of good golfing. And I think for Tiger making the cut, obviously is successful. Been at the Firestone, I think he has 8 wins. Looking for 9, has a chance to get there. And in the world of golf, it's all better if Tiger Woods is in there doing his thing. But I do want to say that today's segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. So last night, obviously, football is back. I've always thought when you play in Ohio, maybe they should think about having either the Cleveland Browns or the Cincinnati Bengals, both programs from Ohio, NFC, and the 2 AFC challenges right there in the heart of Ohio. It's a great setting, great stadium. It's not the Paul Bear. It used to be Canton McKinley High School played there, Paul Brown Stadium. Now they have their own new digs. Good-looking stadium, good-looking event. Love to see football coming back. But as expected, third-string quarterback Tyler Bray took the majority of the reps and had a decent game. I remember seeing Tyler Bray as a high schooler playing, and he played in the Central Valley near Fresno, but also seen him play at Tennessee. Now he's in the NFL. Things are progressing for him. And then I look at the counterpart in Jackson. Jackson did not have the best game, none whatsoever. And, 4 of 10, 33 yards and a pick. Don't get off the high horse yet. For people who believe in Jackson, he still has a chance to prove himself. The players that we saw playing last night, they will not be the guys that will strap it up at the end of the season. So there's always a chance for people to get better. We look at most of the action. Mitch Trubisky got the first half of the Hall of Fame game and was greeted by backup Chase Daniels on the sideline to celebrate his 4-yard touchdown pass to Michael Burton. Chicago, they have a team that's going to have to come through some growing pains, as well as Baltimore. I know Baltimore has Flacco, but last night was definitely an exhibition game. I think the highlight for me is just to see that some of these players will end up in the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. So we always got to tip our hat to that. Football's a tough game, but the first game out the blocks, it wasn't the most impressive game, but it's not supposed to be. It's more of a celebration for the league. And for everybody who says, well, this is not the greatest game, And a lot of media people are really jumping on Jackson for not having his best game. What do you really expect for a rookie player? And you're just getting your feet wet? That happens for a lot of guys. So don't get discouraged, Jackson. And definitely don't think about letting people talk you into becoming a wide receiver, because you still have the skills, but it takes time to develop, and everybody knows that. In the world of football, I think what we have coming up over the weekend for the Hall of Fame induction, we know Terrell Owens doesn't want to be a part of that ceremony, at least in Canton, Ohio, but he is going to do something from his great school, his alma mater. I think it could go two ways on it. T.O. should probably be there, but he'll set his mark off at the Hall of Fame induction Saturday afternoon at his alma mater at Tennessee Chattanooga. Is it a good thing? Bad thing? It depends on each person. Nobody has to always see the world the same. T.O.'s going to do what he has to do, and he's going to make sure that he's happy with himself. He felt he was slighted at a time and took some time to get him in there. But you look at what he's done as a player, you can't really say that he hasn't always produced. All he's done is played the game the way he's supposed to play it. I remember seeing in meeting Terrell Owens when he got on with the 49ers. It was in 49er locker room, and it was still Jerry Rice. They were trying to phase out Jerry Rice. Jerry was a better player. But T.O., if he can learn how to catch the ball, was going to be right there, nipping on his heels. So I'm proud of what he's done over the years. Played in a Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles and had really just come off of a broken foot, but he kept playing. Personality-wise, maybe he rubs people the wrong way. You got to think about what he did on the field. If you think about what he did, the numbers speak for themselves. Only Jerry Rice has more receiving yards than T.O., 15,934. Had a hard time catching the ball at times. I remember being at Candlestick Park when Steve Young dropped back the pass, and they were playing the Packers in a playoff game, and he looked for Terrell Owens right around the goal line. He caught it. He was hit hard by two Green Bay Packers, and he scored, and the 49ers crowd went nuts at Candlestick Park. I remember John Madden making the call saying, "You think they do it for the money? You think they don't love this game?" As T.O. went to the sidelines, he was crying. He was hugging in Coach Mariucci. So congratulations, T.O. You're always going to have people torn whether you should be there or not. But, Jim Plunkett's still not in the Hall of Fame, and he has 2 Super Bowl championships. I also want to look at another great player, Randy Moss, with his length and leaping ability and his speed that was unmatched by anybody in the game. Maybe Cliff Branch back in the day with the Raiders. A 4-time All-Pro, one of the most dominant receivers ever, had 23 touchdown passes in 2007, and that's a guy that oftentimes would draw double coverage. So when you say, well, T.O. is a great receiver and Randy Moss is a great receiver, who's better out of the two? Well, T.O. has more yards, but I think Randy Moss, he's a nightmare for any defensive back to stand up against. So congratulations to both of those great receivers that they're going into the Hall of Fame. I also want to look at the defensive side of the ball. Brian Urlacher, he joins Bill George, Dick Butkus, and Michael Singletary as the Bears' proud lineage of Hall of Fame middle linebackers, the monsters of the Midway. I just think about some of those great Bear teams. And I think I also want to include Lance Briggs, who's not in the Hall of Fame yet. He's out of University of Arizona, also the Sacramento area in high school, played at Elk Grove High School up north. But you think about what the Bears have always featured. Tough-nosed football. And I think their defense is what they want to build around. Offensively can come and go, but when it's cold and it's 25 degrees in Chicago, you're not going to have a lot of teams throwing the ball. You got to have a solid defense to stop the run game. If you look at his counterpart, now here's a guy that has some controversy in his background, but on the football field, when you look at Ray Lewis, I still think back to the University of Miami when he came on for the Hurricanes and led one of the most dominant teams in college football, had a storied college football career, and then getting drafted into the NFL and played about most of his 17 years career was as a face of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, some guys can go, say, 17 years in a league, but that's about 2 different teams for most people. That's 2 careers, actually, for most people. Ray did it 17 years, and to close out in the Super Bowl as a Super Bowl champion over the 49ers, you got to give him some credit for that. You think about what he's done. two-time Defensive Player of the Year, won 2 Super Bowl championships, and one is the league's best ever linebackers. And you think about that on that team, they had a lot of players that were considered, stud players in the Baltimore Ravens, from Suggs, and if you think about the way they forced the ball inside, Ray could run inside and outside. So as a personality, yeah, maybe some people did not like the antics where he had the kind of gyrations going on and the antics before, walking out into the stadium being introduced, but it got the crowd hyped up. So you got to either love it or hate it, but Ray Lewis is definitely a Hall of Famer. Jerry Kramer won 5 titles in the 1960s, the Lombardi Packers, Green Bay Packers. This guard is known best for blocking for Bart Starr in that game-sealing touchdown sneak on the Ice Bowl. They called it the Ice Bowl, and Bart Starr gets the credit, but you look at the line that he had blocking for from Jerry Kramer, an old-timer. Take a long time. You're going over 50 years for Kramer to get in. So congratulations for him. 5 titles. How many players can say they have 5 championship rings that are going into the Hall of Fame? Okay? We know the Patriots knocking on that door, but as far as Hall of Fame right now, congratulations. He waited a long time. Brian Dawkins is the heart and soul when he played football for the Philadelphia Eagles in the early 2000s. A hard-hitting safety, earned 9 Pro Bowls in his 16-year career. 9 Pro Bowls in his 16-year career as one of the stalwarts on that defense. And when you think about Green Bay, and when you think about what they did with Bart Starr, and obviously we talked about Jerry Kramer, well, when Dawkins played, he was the quarterback for the defense for Philadelphia. So he always brought it, never had a hard time living up to what he made on the playing surface. Someone you could always count on. So really proud to see Dawkins. I don't know if he could play in this year's NFL because they're trying to lighten up on the hitting, but that's a good thing. We know all the CTE issues. Robert Brazile, 7-time Pro Bowl linebacker. He spent his entire 10-year career, 75 to 84, with the Houston Oilers. Bum Phillips, them good old boys. They always tried to kick the door in on the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they couldn't get through that steel curtain. But when you think of Robert Brazile, wasn't a big media day back in the days when he played. ESPN, the mothership, came out 83. So a lot of the times, some of these Hall of Famers, you didn't hear much about what they did. Of course you did with Lewis and Moss, Urlacher, and Terrell Owens. But you think about Brazile, 10-year career with the Houston Oilers, down on the AstroTurf, which had really horrible surface. And you'll notice a lot of the guys, when they go out and walk this weekend, they don't all walk as well as they used to. And a lot of that time, you got to look at why, because the turf was so difficult. If you look at Bobby Bedford, spent nearly 3 decades in front of the office for the Dolphins, the Redskins, and the Chargers, won 4 Super Bowl rings, okay, including as a director of player personnel for the undefeated 1972 Miami Dolphins teams and the GM of 2 championship clubs in Washington. So when I look at these players, if for anyone who's ever played the game, as a young boy, you think about some of these guys are your heroes, and you want to play pro sports. Well, you look up to guys that have the opportunity to play on a Sunday, and then to say that some of them are your heroes. We're not saying that sports should have hero worship, but they are some players that put on the uniform and they play, and they earn the right to be called some of the best ever. In fact, some of the best in the universe. So I just want to take my hat to some of those players that we mentioned. Still can't believe that Jim Plunkett's not in the Hall of Fame. I was just looking at the inductees, and I know that we're talking about celebrating players, and Jim Plunkett, played in 2 Super Bowls. The Raiders won both, but still not in the Hall of Fame. That's still a sting when it comes across the landscape, but why is he not? I mean, for anyone that talks about T.O. holding out and wanting to celebrate himself at his old college, as opposed to being there with the rest of the players. Think about how Jim Plunkett must feel knowing that he has 2 championships. Terrell Owens doesn't, and he has as many championships as Ray Lewis. But he still is not considered one of the best. So I just don't understand that. I look at Lamar Jackson last night in the Hall of Fame game. Well, he's a top pick, going to make a lot of money. Jim Plunkett, 2 Super Bowls, still not in the Hall of Fame. Doesn't make any sense. But we know eventually, if there's enough people making enough noise, the great Jim Plunkett will get into the Hall of Fame. He's also out of Stanford University. So we would love to see that happen. And as we go back and forth in the round of sports today, I just want to touch on a few games happening in baseball. We have San Francisco playing at Arizona, and we have that's a great matchup in the National League West. Arizona 60 wins on the season, San Francisco 56 wins. If we look at Houston and the LA Dodgers, a rematch of last year's World Series, Houston and the Dodgers. I'm telling you, that's great theater. Both teams can hit the ball. Houston's coming in with 69 wins, the Dodgers 61. Don't know what's going to happen, but I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to the outcome of that series that's going to stretch over the weekend. We have Oakland, the surprise team of the American League West, and they're taking on Detroit, 64 wins versus 47. Congratulations to Oakland. When you think about Oakland, the Oakland A's are the only team that play in the Coliseum area that's talking about staying there to keep fans happy. But we know that the Golden State Warriors are going back to San Francisco and the Raiders are going to Las Vegas. So congratulations for Oakland for having a surprising winning season and with a record that's better than their across-the-bay rivals, the San Francisco Giants. So congratulations to the Oakland A's, and it would be amazing if they're the team that represents the Bay Area in the playoffs this year. And you look at St. Louis and Pittsburgh, they have their outing going on right now in Boston. You look at Miami and Philadelphia. Those two teams are up playing right now, as well as LA Angels at Cleveland and New York Yankees at Boston Red Sox. Always great theater when Boston and New York are playing on the East Coast. That's when baseball is great, when those great teams and great organizations are playing. So really proud of that. Some of the action in the WNBA, Atlanta's at home versus Chicago, and then Minnesota is traveling to Seattle. Las Vegas, Washington is postponed. I guess there's just so much happening in the sports universe. I know that a lot of people are wondering, what's up with Urban Meyer? We're going to touch on some college football too, but I do want to say that this segment is sponsored by Ben and Mark, they're the leaders when it comes to athletic insurance. And you know that sports is a billion-dollar industry. And boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And for every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports. Whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or your mom and pop soccer league, when you reach out to them, let them know that Big C sent you. And also Big C's doing some recruiting, trying to make sure that Alabama keeps their grip on the polls as they come in number one. We'll touch on that before we close out. Just want to finish a little bit with the golf. Tiger Woods. Thomas is finding room tight for the lead, obviously. Justin Thomas, part of a three-way tie for the lead at the WGC Bridgestone Invitational. Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy are in range in a tie for 10th place, 5 shots behind the co-leaders. Woods knows that he can deliver. I would love to see Woods come through. Of course, we want to see great golfers. I'm an old school guy. I still think I'm young, but sometimes I realize that I'm not, especially when I try to work out with men in their 20s. I realize I'm not quite as strong as some of them young boys. But I do love the fact that when you can talk about Tiger Woods, and when it comes to golf, I would love to see him win. He's had a lot of success at the Firestone Country Club, and hopefully he'll get it done again. At least be in the top 5. I would love to see him in the top 5. I'm sure a lot of people would love to see him win it. You know, that's if you're not Ian Poulter. Of course, I'm sure Poulter, they're going to say nice things, but they don't want Tiger to come in there and beat them. They consider him the old guy. So Poulter and Fleetwood and Thomas, and then Stanley. You have Jason Day at 4th. I would love to see this tight competition coming down the stretch over the weekend. I think it's great for the golf universe, and hopefully Tiger will not disappoint, as we'll look forward to that too. I know as we transition, today is about what's happening in the world of college football. The rankings come out today, and everybody's jockeying to see who's going to be number one. Some people think it's automatically Alabama, but I don't know if you can always say that. I know they're good. They have no reason for anyone to say that they're not the number one team in the country because they're the defending national champions. But when you look at some of the teams early, maybe it's early, and I'm sure after we get through the first 2 or 3 weeks, there'll be some upsets on the world of college football, but we're going to still have something to talk about until they actually play it on the field. But when you look at some of the key losses, Tyrone Crowder, their guard, There's another guard and Taylor Hearn, and wide receiver Deion Kane, among others, safety Van Smith, and Deorian O'Donnell, and his cornerback Ryan Carter. Clemson has a lot to prove, but they keep doing it. If you look at their outlook, after falling short of back-to-back national championships, they should enter 2018 as a heavy favorite to win the ACC Conference and make their fourth straight appearance and the playoffs, the Final Four. So we'll see what happens with Clemson, with Dabo Swinney. If you think about them, their chances received a major boost when a handful of underclassmen, defensive lineman Austin Bryant, and Selin Farrell and Christian Wilkins, as well as Jindal Joseph, decided to return to the school. I don't know why guys would turn down the chance to become wealthy playing pro sports to come back in college and play for free, but sometimes they just have to get the education and they'll have something to fall back on. It's also nice if you have a few $1 million in the bank to fall back on that too. That tends to go a lot better if you have education or not, but we know that's important. I do want to say Big C is lobbying as we speak for Alabama. Now, you think about Alabama last year, 13-1, 7-1 in the SEC. They returned 8 offensive and 4 defensive starters, but no special team players. Their key losses: wide receiver Calvin Ridley, running back Bo Scarborough. But everybody knows that every year Alabama just reloads. I thought one of the better players last year in all of college football, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and he's a safety that really did a lot of wire-to-wire, sideline-to-sideline, covering players, linebacker Rashard Evans. And I thought that if you're Nick Saban, you're always going to have one of the top recruiting classes, so it doesn't really matter. And their punter, J.K. Scott. The outlook: Alabama won its 5th national championship in 9 seasons, knocking off Georgia, league rival 26-23 in overtime. Last year we saw that. They have Tagliova? Say Tua twice if you think you can say that name twice. But Tua Tagliova, and he's their quarterback. And it wasn't hurt that they also have Jalen Hurts coming back, who's only had 2 losses on the season in his career, actually. So a guy with 2 losses, it's not that you get benched, but if you're the type of team that Alabama has, you're going to bring players in and out of the lineup. We look at Ohio State. We know all the scandals that's happening with Ohio State. And Urban Meyer, is too early to tell what's going to happen. 2017, they were 12-2, 8-1 in the Big Ten Conference. They had a blowout loss to Iowa. Nobody can really put their hands around. But their key losses: quarterback J.T. Barrett, the all-time Big Ten champion in touchdowns; defensive end Sam Hubbard; and linebacker Jerome Baker. But it doesn't matter, because this team will always reload. You can run down players, but what stays consistent with the University of Ohio State, or you call the dot the I at Ohio State in the big horseshoe, they will always have some of the best players in the country. So when people say that it's going to be Clemson or is it going to be Alabama, if you're in the state of Ohio, you're always looking at the chance to say, look at how we've recruited. Look at how their athletic football program alone brings in $100 million. For the outlook for the Buckeyes, they fell just short in the college football playoffs for the 3rd time in 4 seasons, but they finished with a 5-game win streak, including a 24-7 beatdown of USC at the Cotton Bowl Classic down in Texas. I'm sure USC wants to stay out of Texas, but they're going back to play the Longhorns this year. Hopefully, Big C, they'll be bringing their own moonshine. But if you love college football the way I do, anyone can argue that they have the better program, but it's always decided on the field. So we look forward to that in Ohio State. And I just know that no matter what happens with Urban Meyer, and no matter what people think about Urban Meyer, maybe he should have said something, and we know that he should have. But I would just hate to see the entire Buckeye program maligned because their coach is human and made a mistake. I don't make excuses for domestic violence. No one should. But he wasn't the one who did it. He's obviously the one that's going to get the blame for not doing enough as well as he should. But I still look at Ohio State. They'll have a dynamic team coming back this year. They actually opened the season, Ohio State, playing Oregon State on September 1st on ABC Sports. So they'll get a chance to find out right away if they're good. Great chance for Oregon State, looking for the upset. That is going to happen. Number 4, Oklahoma, 12-2 last year, 8-1 in the Big 12. And they returned 7 offensive and 6 defensive starters in 2 special teams. The key losses: quarterback Baker Mayfield. We know that he's chomping at the bits to get started as a quarterback in Cleveland for the Cleveland Browns. Don't know if that's going to happen yet. But still, they still had a key loss in tight end Mark Andrews, offensive tackle Orlando Brown. I look at their defensive side of the ball, to name a few: Emmanuel Beals, the linebacker, and Will Johnson, as well as Steve Parker as a strong safety. But Oklahoma, they always reload. Lincoln Riley did a great job with Stoops leaving. A lot like Barry Switzer, you just come on and there's always more players that want to play for the Sooners. So I'm sure that Oklahoma in the Big 12 will have a lot of success. Texas is going to be, chomping at the bits, but I still think that Oklahoma is a part of that conference. Oklahoma State also will have a lot to say about it, as well as Texas Tech. Number 5, Georgia. Them Bulldogs from Georgia, last year's almost national champion, but could not hold off their rival in the Alabama Crimson Tide. They were 13-2 last year, 7-1 in the SEC, 7 offensive and 5 defensive players coming back, 1 special teams. Key losses, and this is a huge loss: running back Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, as well as you look at their defensive side of the ball, cornerback Malcolm Parrish and safety Dominic Sanders, as well as cornerback Aaron Davis. That's a lot for any team to lose, and yet they still have the chance to crack a top 10 as a team lining up to play college football. I'm not sold on Georgia yet. They got to prove that they can do it without Chubb, because he was a difficult man to bring down, kind of a hard-nosed running back who made his way to the NFL. Will most likely have a lot of success in the NFL as well. So I look forward to seeing how successful he will be. I mean, I just think they had so many players last year that are in the NFL now, and now they're still a top 5 team. So a lot of work to be done for Georgia, but they look like they have the guys that can do it. I want to look at a team in the Midwest, in Wisconsin, that may be overrated. I know people don't believe that, but when's the last time Wisconsin's really won a lot? You got to go back to the days when Earl Bruce was coaching there, but they went out and won a Rose Bowl. Last year they were 13-1, 9-0 Big Ten, but they lost out to Ohio State. This team was just close to being in the college football playoff system, but they were not able to hold that tight and get in and get it done. So obviously they had some key losses in tight end Tony Framage, fullback Austin Ramesh, and defensive end Alec James, cornerback Nick Nelson. They're a team that still has to compete with Ohio State, and they have to compete with Michigan and Michigan State. So no matter what it looks like, you look at running back Jonathan Taylor, set the FBS freshman record, 1,977 yards, and he'll be leading Heisman Trophy contender in 2018. Cornerbacks Alex Hornibrook also will be back. But you know what? They had a perfect chance last year to get into the college football playoffs. Almost undefeated season. Got knocked off. I don't think they can improve on what they did last year, but we'll have to see what happens. The team out west that really holds the candle for the Pac-12, you have to look at the University of Washington Huskies. They're not the team that they had under Don James that won a national championship back in '91 when they had Billy Joe Hobart and Mark Brunell and Bino Bryant and just a lot of Lincoln Kennedy played there and Napoleon Kaufman. They had so many dominant players in that Washington team. They were 10-3 last year, 7-2 in the Pac-12. They returned 8 offensive starters and 9 defensive starters and 1 special team. This is pretty much the same team they had last year. Their key losses: defensive tackle Vita Villa and wide receiver Dante Pettis. I'm telling you, linebacker Keyshawn Barrera and tight end Bill Dissly. This is a team, if they can't win the Pac-12 this year, I don't know if they will ever win it under Peterson. He's a good coach. They've not been known as a very physical team like a Stanford or a USC, but Jake Browning was the high school national player of the year as a senior at Folsom High School out of Northern California, Sacramento, and he passed for 91 touchdowns as a senior. He didn't play in most of the fourth quarters, and they played at the highest level of competition in California and won a state championship. So when you look at what they have, their outlook, the Huskies look like the class of the 2018 Pac-12. They have contenders now in tailback Myles Gaskin. He decided to return to school, rushed for almost 1,400 yards, 21 touchdowns. Jake Browning became the league's best quarterback with USC's Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen gone. And even Washington State's Luke Falk departing. If you look at them right now, they have a chance to make a statement game against Auburn. They have to get that done down deep in the South as they go down to Atlanta to open the season. We'll see what happens with Washington, but whether they win or lose, I think this team has a chance to win the Pac-12 no matter what happens down at Auburn. And hopefully, if they're accustomed to what happens usually when Pac-12 teams go down south, bring your own Gatorade, Big C. As you say, sometimes the Gatorade makes people sleepy. It's supposed to give you energy, but sometimes the West Coast teams go down south and they get that sleepy Gatorade in them. But hopefully Washington will heed the warning. Number 8, the Miami Hurricanes. What do you say about Miami? Is this the team under Schollenberger and Johnson? No. 2017, they were 10-3. 7-1 in the ACC. They returned 8 offense and 8 defensive starters, 1 special teams. I'm telling you, this team, key losses, Braxton Berrios and Casey McDermott. But you look at their outcome, their outlook for Mark Richt, the second season back at his alma mater. This is a team that has so much talent. If you look at the state of Florida, recruiting for talent, they're as loaded as any team that you can find in college football. But do they have the discipline? And sometimes that's what they've been missing. Quarterback Malik Rozier will have to avoid mistakes and the turnovers that plagued him in his first season as a starter. I just think that this is a team that's ready to challenge for the conference championship in the ACC. Get a knock off Clemson. Florida State is not as dominant as they used to be. The Hurricanes, this is the team that will open up with LSU. Those two teams, both of them have to determine if they're going to challenge for their league championship, let alone trying to get to a national championship bowl game. But I like the way Miami's reloaded. We'll see how they look against LSU. Michigan State, number 9, still way too early. They were 7-2 last year in the Big Ten. 10-3 overall. Key losses: Brian Allen, defensive end Demetrius Cooper, and linebacker Chris Fry. So if you look at what happened to Michigan State last year, after winning some games last year, they got to figure out how to stay consistent. Here's a team that beat Washington State, which was challenging for perhaps the Pac-12 conference at one time, but not really a Pac-12 elite team. And then they played up against Michigan State. Michigan State looked really good last year in that bowl game against Washington State. Can they take that momentum and keep it going in 2018? Tailback L.J. Scott is also back, along with breakout receiver Felton Davis III. So I look at them and realize that they have a lot to prove this year, but can they get it done? West Virginia, number 10, 7-6 last year, 5-4 in the Big 12. They're going to have to bounce back big. Key losses: Justin Crawford and Karon Wright. I'm not impressed with West Virginia. I know a lot of people want to say, well, look out for West Virginia, but I'm not that impressed with them. I do want to see them get back to the days of Major Harris, but I'm just not there yet. They have to show that they can beat those schools in Texas, and they should be a Big East team or an ACC team. And they really don't have the recruiting advantage to recruit when they're playing against Texas, Kansas State. They're playing against the Oklahomas of the world. But those teams down south, they can get that southern talent, where up in West Virginia, they don't have the same success getting that. But West Virginia has to improve on defense to become a legitimate Big 12 contender. And they open up the season against Tennessee, Chattanooga, and then they play K-State and TCU and Oklahoma at home in Big 12 play. So they have some openings there, but I'm not that impressed with them. And so that's your top 10 teams. Everybody knows that if you love them, of course you believe in them. But if you don't love them, you can always say this team is not the team that's going to do it. I don't know what's going to happen at Ohio State. I do know if you look at some of the other teams in the top 10, Auburn, they're coming around 10 or 11, 10-4 last season. If you look at Notre Dame, 10-3. You love to see the Fighting Irish have success. It's just good when Touchdown Jesus can at least celebrate football championships. It's not right with the world, Big C, when Touchdown Jesus cannot get into the college football playoffs. Followed up is Michigan State, depending on where you believe. Some people put them in the top 10 or not. Stanford, looking at right around 13 on the season, followed by number 14, Michigan. Harbaugh really has to turn things around. He's under the hot seat at Michigan. I think Urban Meyer will take some of the heat off at Harbaugh just because of all the allegations going on there. Southern California. Men of Troy. The men of Troy can't be happy when they're picked behind Stanford and also Washington in the Pac-12 defending champions. Last 2 years playing for the Pac-12 championship. Thought they could have been a championship team in the Final Four. Did not get it done, but USC at least making noise at 15. Followed by TCU, finished 11-3 last year at TCU. Virginia Tech 9-4, coming in at number 17. Number 18, Mississippi State. They are a team that will open up versus Stephen F. Austin. Number 19, Florida State, 7-6 on the season, and they will open up against number 17, Virginia Tech. Number 20 is you're looking at Texas, depending on what polls, 7-6 last year, opening up versus Maryland, and they have a big game versus USC this year too. So the reminder of the 2005 Rose Bowl, where both teams set the world on fire, and then Vince Young actually got the nod over Reggie Bush to win the national championship, and Bush won the Heisman Trophy. So there's a lot going on in the sports universe. We just wanted to bring that to you, from golf to the NFL Hall of Fame game and the inductees to the NFL Hall of Fame. Mentioned some Major League Baseball going on too. And for this beautiful Friday, I just want to wish everyone a happy and safe weekend. May you enjoy your sports. Football is back. Congratulations to everyone inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. College football is back. Good seeing some of the players that are lining up to see if they can make the transition to the next level. So as Big C's out down south, scouting around to see if he can get Alabama in all the polls to be ranked number 1. I don't know what kind of gifts he's handing out, but I'm sure he's handing out some nice gifts. No matter what you're going through, every king has challenges. And speaking of challenges, everybody has to overcome them. And speaking of that, as we always tell you, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.